Paris. It is a city of impossible contradictions, a place of whispered romances and deafening revolutions, of golden palaces and bone-filled tunnels. For 2,000 years, this small patch of land on the river Seine has been the world's stage. It has been burned to the ground by Vikings, starved by Nazis, and torn apart by its own citizens, only to rise every single time, more beautiful and more defiant than before. But behind the glitter of the Eiffel Tower lies a darker, grittier truth. This isn't just a city of light. It's a city of blood, power, and an unquenchable thirst for freedom. I'm Roni, and today on History and Power Explained, we aren't just visiting Paris, we are resurrecting it. From a collection of mud huts to the capital of the world, this is the epic, violent, and glorious story of Paris. Let's go back, way back. Long before the cafes and the couture. To 259 BC, the Seine is wilder then. In the middle of the gray water sits a tiny island, the Isle de la Cite. Here, a Celtic tribe called the Parisii builds a life. They aren't philosophers, they're survivors. They are boat people controlling the river trade. They think they are alone. They are wrong. In 52 BC. The horizon fills with the glint of Roman iron. Julius Caesar is here. The Parisii fight with a suicidal bravery, burning their own homes to the ground rather than surrendering them to Rome. But you cannot stop the Roman machine. The Romans don't just conquer, they engineer. They renamed the ruins Lutetia, the marshy place. It sounds humble, but the transformation is staggering. Suddenly, there are straight roads, luxury bathhouses, and a massive amphitheater seating 15,000 people. 300 years, Lutetia is a Roman dream. If you lived here in 200 AD, you had running water and heated floors. But empires have a shelf life. By the 3rd century, the Germanic tribes are screaming at the gates. The marshy place is under fire. The residents flee the mainland and retreat back to that original island. They pull up the stones of their beautiful temples to build walls. The Roman dream is ending. A dark age is coming. And Paris needs a miracle. It's 451 AD, the Roman Empire is a hollow shell. And from the east, a nightmare is approaching. Attila the Hun. He is called the Scourge of God. He has leveled cities across Europe. And now, his eyes are on Paris. The people are packing. They are ready to abandon the city to the flames. Then, a young woman steps into the street. Her name is Genevieve. Legend says she stood before the terrified mob and told them, "Let the men flee if they wish, but we women will pray." It sounds like a suicide pact. But then, the impossible happens. Attila's army, for reasons historians still debate, suddenly veers south. They bypass Paris entirely. Genevieve becomes a living legend. She gives Paris its first taste of a feeling that will define it forever. Defiance. By 508 AD, a new power rises. Clovis I, king of the Franks, he unites the tribes, converts to Christianity, and makes a pivotal choice. He names this city his capital, and he gives it back its original name, Paris. But being the capital of a kingdom makes you a target. And the next invaders aren't coming by land, they're coming by water. Starting in 845, the Vikings arrive. They don't want to rule. They want to loot. Imagine the terror watching those dragon-headed ships slide up the Seine. The Parisians have to buy them off with 7,000 pounds of silver. It's a humiliation. But in 885, when the Vikings return with 700 ships and 30,000 men, the Parisians say, "No more." A few hundred defenders hold the bridges for months against thousands. They survive. They learn that if Paris is to endure, it must be a fortress. The year is 1163. Paris is growing. It's loud, it's smelly, and it's becoming the intellectual heart of Europe. On the Isle de la Cite, Bishop Maurice de Sully looks at a crumbling old church and decides Paris needs something transcendent, something that touches the sky. He began building Notre Dame Cathedral. It takes 200 years. This isn't just architecture. It's an arms race with gravity. They invent flying buttresses, stone ribs that hold the walls up, allowing for massive, glowing, stained glass windows. While the masons are building the soul of the city, the University of Paris is building its mind. On the left bank, scholars gather from all over the world. They speak Latin to understand each other, giving birth to the name we still use today, the Latin Quarter. But it's King Philip II, Philip Augustus, who turns Paris into a superpower. He paves the muddy streets. He builds a massive wall around the city. And on the edge of the river, he builds a grim, thick-walled fortress to protect the royal treasury. He calls it the Louvre. By 1300, Paris is the largest city in Europe with 200,000 people. It is wealthy, smart, and proud. But the 14th century is about to bring a horseman that no wall can keep out. The air in 1348 is thick with the smell of vinegar and death. The Black Plague has arrived. In Paris, the numbers are incomprehensible. Between a third and a half of the city dies. Bodies are piled in the streets. The social order collapses. Then comes the 100 Years' War with England. For 16 years, Paris is occupied by the English. The French king is in hiding. The city is a ghost of itself. Then, the most unlikely hero in history appears. A 17-year-old peasant girl named Joan of Arc. She claims to hear the voices of saints. She leads an army to save France. She doesn't take Paris. She's wounded by a crossbow bolt at the St. Honor Gate, but she changes the energy of the war. She is captured and burned at the stake at age 19, but the fire she lit can't be put out. In 1436, Paris is finally liberated. The English are gone. By 1500, Paris is ready for a makeover. King Francis I is obsessed with the Italian Renaissance. He brings Leonardo da Vinci to France and the Mona Lisa with him. He starts turning the Louvre fortress into a palace. Paris is becoming elegant. It's becoming the city of art. But beneath the art, a religious fuse is burning. Catholics versus Protestants, and in Paris, that fuse leads to a massacre. August 24th, 1572, the St. Bartholomew's Day Massacre. What starts as a targeted assassination turns into a frenzied slaughter. Neighbors kill neighbors. The Seine turns red with blood. 70,000 people are murdered across France. It is a stain on the city's soul that will take centuries to scrub clean. Healing finally comes with Henry IV. He's a Protestant who realizes he can never rule a Catholic city, so he famously converts, saying, "Paris is well worth a mass." He builds the Pont Neuf, the oldest bridge standing today. He creates the Place des Vosges. He tries to make Paris a place of peace. But the peace is fragile, because as the 17th century dawns, a new king is coming. A king who doesn't just want to lead Paris. He wants to be the sun around which it orbits. The stage is set for absolute power and the most famous revolution in human history. The 17th century belongs to one man, Louis XIV, the Sun King. He treats power like a performance. He expands the Louvre and builds the Hotel des Invalides, but he has a problem. He doesn't trust Paris. He remembers the riots of his childhood. In 1682, he does something unthinkable. He moves the entire seat of power to Versailles, 12 miles away. Paris is left behind by its king, but it doesn't wither. Instead, it becomes the intellectual engine of the world. This is the Enlightenment. In smoke-filled cafes, men like Voltaire and Rousseau are questioning everything. Does a king really have a divine right to rule? Or does power belong to the people? But while the philosophers are debating in the cafes, the city is literally rotting. By the 1780s, Paris is so overcrowded that its cemeteries are overflowing. The stench of death is making people sick. The solution? They begin moving 6 million corpses into the old limestone quarries beneath the city. Today, we call them the catacombs, a silent, skeletal city beneath the streets of the living. It was a grim reminder. Something in Paris was dying. And it wasn't just the people. It was the old way of life. July 14th, 1789, the fuse finally hits the powder. Bread prices have soared. The people are starving. At the center of the city stands the Bastille, a medieval fortress and a symbol of royal tyranny. A mob of thousands descends upon it. They aren't looking for a fight. They're looking for gunpowder. When the Bastille falls, the world changes forever. The French Revolution isn't just a riot. It's a total dismantling of reality. But revolutions are hungry. They start with liberty, equality, fraternity, and they end with the guillotine. In what is now the Place de la Concorde, King Louis XVI and Queen Marie Antoinette lose their heads. Then comes the Reign of Terror. The revolution begins to eat its own. For months, the streets of Paris literally run red. Thousands are executed in a fever of paranoia. Paris has become a slaughterhouse. And from the blood of the revolution, a little corporal emerges to take it all. He takes the chaos of Paris and turns it into an empire. Napoleon wants Paris to be the new Rome. He commissions the Arc de Triomphe. He turns the Louvre into a global museum, filling it with treasures looted from across Europe. He gives Paris its first modern legal code and its grandest ambitions. But Napoleon's Paris is built on conquest. When his empire collapses in 1815, Paris is occupied by foreign armies for the first time in centuries. The city is humbled, but the revolutionary spirit is now part of its DNA. For the next 50 years, Paris is a pressure cooker. 1830 Revolution. 1848 Revolution. Barricades become the city's favorite architecture. Finally, Napoleon III, the nephew of the first Napoleon, decides to fix the problem of Paris. He hires Baron Haussmann to tear the city apart. Haussmann destroys the narrow medieval alleys where revolutionaries used to hide. He replaces them with the wide, grand boulevards we see today. Why? So the army could have clear lines of fire and cavalry could charge the mobs. It makes Paris the most beautiful city in the world and the most controlled. But even the widest boulevards couldn't stop what was coming next. The industrial-scale horror of the 20th century. The late 1800s are the Belle Epoque, the beautiful era. In 1889, for the World's Fair, a metal lattice tower rises over the city. Parisians hate it. They call it a metal asparagus, but the Eiffel Tower becomes the ultimate symbol of a city reaching for the future. But the lights of the Belle Epoque are extinguished in 1914 by the First World War. Paris becomes a city of the wounded and the grieving. Then, after a brief, jazz-filled recovery in the 1920s, ultimate darkness arrives. June 14, 1940, the Nazi swastika flies over the Eiffel Tower. For 4 years, Paris is a city of shadows. Jewish Parisians are rounded up and sent to death camps. The city is forced to serve its conquerors. But in the shadows, the resistance is alive. In August 1944, as Allied forces approach, the people of Paris rise up one last time. They take back their streets. When General de Gaulle walks down the Champs-Élysées, he doesn't just celebrate a military victory. He celebrates the soul of a city that refused to die. Since the war, Paris hasn't stopped evolving. From the student protests of 1968 that changed French culture, to the controversial glass pyramid of the Louvre, to the tragic fire that nearly claimed Notre Dame in 2019, Paris is a city that has seen the best and worst of humanity. It is a city of fire and fury, built on a foundation of boat people and guarded by saints. When you walk its streets today, you aren't just walking past monuments. You are walking over layers of history, over the bones of revolutionaries and the dreams of artists. Paris is proof that power can build a city, but it is the passion of the people that makes it immortal. If you want to understand how the world we live in was shaped by the cities of the past, make sure to hit that like button. It helps us keep the lights on here at History and Power Explained. And don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. Our next deep dive into the engines of history is already on the way. I'm Roni. Thanks for traveling through time with us.